Okay, it's 1 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. And we can move on to item 1.2 of our agenda, which is roll call. And I would like our clerk, Bianca Dragicevic, to please call the roll.
Thank you. Mayor Lambshead, are you present?
I am present.
Deputy Mayor Armstrong?
I also am present.
Councillor Franzen?
Present.
Councillor Braybrook?
Present.
And Councillor Cadigan.
Present.
And for staff, we have Donna Taggart, CIO Treasurer.
Present.
We have Jesse Clark, Director of Corporate Services Clerk.
Present.
Evan Grieger, Director of Public Works.
Present.
Adele Arbor, Planner.
Present.
Derek Bertram, Planning Technician.
Present.
And Barb Waldron, Director of Building and Planning, CBO.
Present.
And Bianca Dragicevic, Deputy Clerk, is present.
Okay, thank you very much, Bianca. We can move on to item 1.3 of our agenda, which is land acknowledgement and moment of reflection. We respectfully acknowledge that Trent Lakes and Peterborough County are located on the Treaty 20 Mississauga territory and in the traditional territory of the Mississauga and Chippewa nations, collectively known as the Williams Treaty First Nation, which include Alderville, Beausoleil, Curve Lake, Georgina Island, Hiawatha, Rama, and Scugog Island First Nations. Trent Lakes respectfully acknowledges that the Williams Treaty First Nations are the stewards and caretakers of these lands and waters in perpetuity, and that they continue to maintain this responsibility to ensure their health and integrity for generations to come. We will now take a moment to reflect on these principles and our duties and responsibilities as members of council. Thank you very much. We will move on to item 2 of our agenda, which is disclosure of pecuniary interest. If any members of council have a pecuniary interest on an item on the agenda, please disclose it now or anytime during the meeting prior to discussing anything you have an interest in. Seeing no hands, we can move on to item 3 of our agenda, which is the approval of the agenda as circulated. The Councillor Franzen and Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on to item 4 of our agenda, which is the adoption of our minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes to adopt. We can do them together or separately at the discretion of council. So Councillor Cadigan.
Motion to adopt both.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? None. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on to item 5 of our agenda, which is committees and boards. Two sets of minutes on our agenda, 5.1 and 5.2. We can do them separately or together at the discretion of council. I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Go ahead.
Motion to accept both.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on to item 5.3 of our agenda, which is liaison reports for county boards and committees. So, do you have any reports? Seeing none, we can move on to section 6 of our agenda, which is our statutory public meeting pursuant to the Planning Act. I would entertain a motion to suspend our regular council meeting and go into the public meeting. Councillor Braybrook for a mover, Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We are going to go to item 6.1 of our agenda. And Derek Bertram, our planning technician, would you like to do your preamble and introduce the file, please?
Thank you, Mr. Lambshead, and through you, this is a public meeting under Section 34 of the Planning Act to consider an amendment to the municipality's comprehensive zoning bylaw B 2014-070. A notice of public meeting for today's applications containing the prescribed information was circulated to all landowners within a 120-meter radius of the subject lands at least 20 days prior to this meeting, and a sign was posted on the subject lands in accordance with the Planning Act. The notice was also mailed to all prescribed agencies, public bodies, and persons in accordance with the regulations. Anyone wanting to be notified of any decision from today's public meeting must inform myself or the clerk, and a notice of passing will be mailed to them setting out the method and manner in which appeals may be made to the Ontario Land Tribunal. If a person does not send in a written comment prior to the passing of the bylaw or make an oral submission at the public meeting, that person may not be entitled to appeal the decision.
Okay.
First meeting is a public meeting for file 2404 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by agent Joan Phillips on behalf of property owner James Langer for the property known as 45 Fire Route 223. The subject land has a shoreline frontage along Mississauga Lake of approximately 133 meters, 437 feet, and a lot area of approximately 0.42 of a hectare, or 1 acre. The applicant's lot is currently occupied by a detached secondary dwelling in a derelict condition with a ground floor area of 371 square feet. A temporary tent storage structure with a ground floor area of 645 square feet, and a permit was issued in 2018 for the demolition of the primary dwelling, which had a ground floor area of 645 square feet. The applicant intends to demolish the detached secondary dwelling. The applicant is proposing a replacement single-story dwelling with a walkout having a ground floor area of 186 square meters or 2,005 square feet and a gross floor area of approximately 372.5 square meters or 4,010 square feet. Although not identified on Chris Jones's report, the applicant has since confirmed that 2 attached open-air decks will also be constructed on the proposed dwelling, which will have a combined floor area of 83 square meters or 893 square feet. The purpose of the application is to seek relief from the comprehensive zoning bylaws minimum water yard setback. The proposed dwelling's closest setback to the high water mark is proposed at 20.3 meters, while the permitted setback in the bylaw is 30 meters. The lake-facing deck will have a setback of approximately 20.24 meters from the high water mark, which is generally in keeping with the demolished dwelling. The applicant underwent a zoning bylaw amendment in 2023, where it obtained approval on October 3rd, 2023 for the purpose of severance of application B5722. There is a planning report on the agenda from Municipality's planning consultant, Chris Jones. Chris's report states that the application is generally consistent with the provincial policy statement and growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe. Recommendation 2 of the report requests that the applicant execute a site plan agreement. This request has been fulfilled and a bylaw shall be brought to the next scheduled council meeting at council's discretion. There have been no further comments received from any circulated agencies or neighboring property owners with respect to this proposal. Further, if any members of the public would like to make an oral submission, please use the raise a hand feature. And if you're in the virtual gallery, or physically raise your hand now if you're in the physical gallery, so we can promote you in order to make the submission. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek Bertram. Is there anyone in the gallery that's for or against this application?
Joan Phillips, agent.
Okay, Joan, thank you very much. We may have questions. Is there anyone electronic that is for or against this application?
There's no online.
We are seeing none in the electronic gallery. Does any members of council have any questions of Joan about this application? I'm seeing none. I think you got off pretty easy on that. Okay, no other questions of council staff or okay, we can move on to our second application. Go ahead, Derek Bertram.
Okay, thank you. Through you, Mayor Lambshead. This is a public meeting for file 2405 to consider a zoning bylaw amendment submitted by agent Marnie Saunders of DM Wills on behalf of the property owners Christine Melichalose and Dale Eakin for the property known municipally as 165 Melody Bay Road. The subject land is a shoreline lot on Buckhorn Lake with a shoreline frontage of approximately 30 meters or 100 feet and a lot area of approximately 0.55 acre. The applicant's lot is currently occupied by a single-story dwelling with a ground floor area of 73 square meters or 786 square feet, a dry land boathouse with a ground floor area of 46.5 square meters or 500 square feet, and an accessory shed with a ground floor area of 108 square feet. The applicant is proposing to demolish the existing dwelling and construct a replacement 2-story dwelling with a crawl space. The replacement dwelling is proposed to have a ground floor area of 171.5 square meters or 1,846 square feet. And the gross floor area is to be confirmed once the applicant provides an updated floor plan. The applicant is also proposing a detached accessory garage with a total ground floor area of 23.4 square meters or 252 square feet. The purpose of the application is to seek relief from the comprehensive zoning bylaw for the water yard setback to the proposed dwelling from 30 meters to 23.8 meters, an interior side yard setback from 4.5 meters to 2.3, and a front yard setback for the detached accessory garage from 12 meters to 10. The applicant has submitted an archaeological assessment, floodplain letter, and an environmental impact study in support of the application. It is also important to note that the replacement dwelling and detached garage are located above the regulated flood level for Buckhorn Lake. The floodplain letter prepared by DM Wills recommended that the finished floor elevation of the proposed dwelling should be placed at least 0.3 meters above the floodplain elevation, putting the finished floor elevation at 247.12 MASL. As well, consideration should be given for flood proofing of the proposed dwelling below this elevation. The environmental impact study identified the presence of black ash, which is a protected species on the property. The environmental impact study recommended that a qualified professional be retained to perform a health assessment of the black ash identified on the subject property to determine whether the protections provided under the Endangered Species Act apply to the trees present on the subject lands. There is a planning report on the agenda from the municipality's planning consultant, Chris Jones. Chris's report identifies that the proposed replacement dwelling represents a 100% expansion in the water yard over the ground floor area of the existing dwelling, which appears reasonable given that the replacement dwelling would marginally improve the existing setback and generally utilizes the existing building envelope. The report further identifies that the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application is consistent with the provincial policy statement and growth plan for the Greater Golden Horseshoe and meets the general intent of the official plan and zoning bylaw. The application was circulated in accordance with Section 34 of the Planning Act. All neighboring property owners within 120 meters of subject land and all applicable agencies, municipal staff have received comments from a neighboring property owner, which have been circulated to members of council. In support of the application, Chris Jones recommends that the execution of a site plan development agreement to incorporate the recommendations of the environmental impact study and floodplain letter, as well as the inclusion of the submitted lot grading and drainage plan. This concludes the summary of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment application. And Mr. Mayor, I now turn it over to you to the public input portion of the meeting. And if anyone would like to speak at this time, please use the raise a hand function in the virtual gallery, or if you are in the physical gallery, please raise your hand so we may be able to promote you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Derek. Okay, is there anyone in the gallery for or against this application? Go ahead. Can you please state your name for the record?
Yeah, my name is Michelle Instead, and it's Ron and Michelle. We live in the adjacent property, property that's in question. And just like to thank council for giving us the opportunity to speak on this matter today.
Yeah, maybe people on the audience in the gallery, virtual gallery can't hear you, so possibly come to this table and use that microphone, please. Thank you. Sorry for that.
Sit here.
Yes, please, yeah.
So I just want to ask if council has had the opportunity to read and review what we had submitted regarding this application.
Yes, I certainly have.
And whether I need to go through and repeat everything that was stated or not.
Maybe hit the high points, like maybe hit, if you have a short summary, that would be nice. Well, it just gets your opinion out there, right?
I'll just read the general stuff. I won't quote all the things that I quoted, and I just did that so it was a reference to whoever was reading this, where I found this information. So basically, the zoning bylaws help to protect areas and are in place for that purpose. And the more we read and studied these reports, the more we were concerned as to what effect this may have on our property. We're concerned about the impact and any incidents that may happen as a result of these proposed changes. These bylaws are in place for a reason, and it's a rural municipality, and we oppose any building that's closer than the existing bylaw setback that is currently in place, specifically in terms of the side yard setback. So the current side yard setback is 14.8 feet, and they're requesting 7.5. And they've really, one of the things in the report said, oh, there was a tree line there, and that was sufficient reason to allow the building to come closer. But we really feel it's infringing on our privacy and our space coming that close, being as it is a rural property. And these amendments, if allowed, are changing the policy on properties and setting a precedent that is already in place. These amendments are many and significant that are being requested, and they're not minor amendments. And there are several and considerable changes being requested that need serious consideration and research. It has taken us a great deal of time to read through and decipher these documents on such short notice. We're not experts, and we are trying to understand the extent to which this will affect our property and what repercussions could result from the decisions in relation to all of this. And it is of vital importance to us. It's not a minor exception, and they have not provided any compelling reason as to why they should be given these exemptions to all of these bylaws and not held to the rules that apply to everyone else, or why a decision in favor of these amendments would be a valid one. There were many things that came to light as we read through these documents. And one was whether this is the construction of a new dwelling or a cottage addition. And I did quote in my submission several places where it refers to a cottage addition as opposed to the notice which indicates the construction of a new dwelling. So that's our first question of concern is, is this the construction of a new dwelling or the expansion of the existing cottage? It's our understanding that the bylaws in place for a expansion do not apply to the construction of a new dwelling. I don't know if that's correct or not. I guess I'm asking that question. And
Do you want to answer these one at a time, maybe? Del, would you be able to answer that question, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, our current bylaw that allows expansions and replacements within the water yard talks about if you're adding an addition, which is an expansion to, or a replacement of, the rules are the same in our zoning bylaw if you're doing one or the other.
Thank you, Adele.
okay. So it was just very confusing, as to whether it's the construction of a new dwelling or the expansion of the existing. So I guess that I want to confirm that. We would like confirmation of that. Is it the construction of a new dwelling or?
It is absolutely the construction of a new dwelling. It's further from the water yard and will comply to the setbacks of the floodplain mapping, I think it is. They've adjusted the cottage considerably to make sure that it fits in that floodplain mapping, as well as the moving of the accessory structure too.
So it's my understanding that they need to move that, and as a result, they need to come closer to our property. That's kind of
With the cottage, or are we talking about the accessory structure?
well, both,
Okay.
but namely the cottage or the new dwelling, because
Yeah.
I guess they're getting rid of the cottage and constructing new. So I don't understand what the reasoning is to come towards our property at 7 feet, 7.5 feet, when the existing bylaw is 14.8, like what the reasoning is for that. We just feel it is infringing on our privacy and our safety too. We've had other issues that I've explained in my submission with regards to this property. We do not consider the proposed 113% expansion a modest increase, and we do not consider these requested setbacks release minor, and a well-treed property line is not sufficient considering that several trees were already removed from the area. Also, it is not a sufficient explanation as to or a reason why this should be considered. These proposed amendments would encroach on our safety and privacy. The documents indicate that there's a marginal wetland on the northwest corner of the property. However, significant changes were made to this wetland area. In March in 2022, we tried to speak to the contractor regarding these changes that were made. And this included the removal of wetland from the wetland area of soil, trees, vegetation, and the installation of a culvert and raising the grade on that property. As a result of these changes that were made, the wetland area had been disturbed. The trees were falling over onto our property. By removing a significant amount of material and raising the grade with fill, we were completely flooded out. The water was coming over our driveway to the other side of our driveway. The response we received was that we are not from around here and to mind our own business, and we were promptly dismissed. Several documents, different documents, indicate that no trees need to be removed from the property. However, at least 25 trees were removed in July of 2023, and again in March of 2024. They removed the trees from the property to the southwest side beside the wetland property. We're concerned that this will endanger our property and cause flooding. It also impinges on our safety and privacy. Furthermore, in relation to the flood plan evaluation study, the elevation on the property at 165 Melody Bay Road is already above the elevation of our side yard. This is clearly illustrated in the photographic log on page 3, number 6, showing the side yard elevation is significantly higher on their property and slopes down towards our property. Again, cause for concern that this will cause flooding to our property. The drawing also shows the location of the new septic, which is even closer to the property line than the proposed bylaw amendments for the new dwelling. This is concerning since this is located beside the drainage ditch, which leads directly to Buckhorn Lake. The proposed, under the junior notes for the junior planner, it also noted that the bylaw amendment increase was 126.9%, but the documents refer to 113%. So that was another question that came up that we just wondered exactly what was the increase for this proposed dwelling. And it also reported that this proposal cannot be considered minor in nature. And that's all.
Okay, thank you very much for your comments. I just, any questions from council? I think some of the reasons that you concerned about, how far is your cottage from the lot line? I'm just curious. And are you to the north or the?
We're to the north.
Okay. Yeah, because that wetland goes onto your property.
Yes,
as well,
it's
right?
at the driveway at the north.
Yep. Okay. So hence you're going to get a bit of moisture there. It is a wetland in the spring.
So and the other concern that we did kind of think of that I didn't mention in my submission was that when they do have to dig for a new dwelling, and if they came within 7.5 feet of the property line, when they do a dig for that, they need space for that, and that could potentially be another 3 or 4 feet. And that's concerning that, you know, we could have erosion or the soil could collapse there, and our trees that are on that lot line could be affected. They could come down, the roots could be disturbed.
I think there's some mitigating measures suggested in there.
Not for that. That was only for the wetland area at the near the road.
Okay, well, thank you very much. Is there
Thank
any
you.
other comments?
We do have Diana on the line
Okay.
from DM Will
Okay,
that has her hand raised.
okay. Then
I can.
please unmute Diana. Diana,
Good
are you?
afternoon. I'm here. Good afternoon, everyone. I will unraise my hand because it's been up for a while. Apologies for that. I'd like to thank everyone for having me here today. Marnie Saunders, our senior planner, was the original planner on the file. She is quite ill starting this morning, so I am jumping in for her so she can rest and not strain her voice any further. So my name is Diana Kay. I'm the principal planner with DM Wills Associates Limited, and we are located in Peterborough. I will be speaking on behalf of the application today for our client. I'd like to thank staff for their staff report and overview of the file today, and we concur with the recommendations. I did have an opportunity to review the opposition letter that was submitted this morning. And so I thought the best use of my time, instead of reiterating what was already said through staff's presentation, was to address some of those questions so we can have further dialogue about that. The first item would be the zoning bylaw amendment. So the thing with zoning bylaws is that they are allowed to be amended because not every property is a one size fits all. There are factors that need to be considered with what is and is not appropriate in terms of how to develop a site and the setbacks that were applied with the site. There was some mention with what is minor versus not minor. That's absolutely correct. There are two different processes that we can approach varying provisions from the zoning bylaw, one being a minor variance if it's considered minor, and if staff feels like there's more justification that's required, we go through the zoning bylaw amendment route, which is what we're presenting today. So it is beyond the minor variance type of strategy here. There's more justification that we have to demonstrate, especially with the supporting studies that were completed and submitted in support of the application. As you can see, the site is highly constrained with respect to floodplain and natural heritage features. So it really limits the opportunities of where you can build on this site. And so because this is an existing lot of record, you are permitted to build on existing lots of record. The intent here, because the provincial policies are so strict with respect to floodplains, you cannot develop within a floodplain. So we are required to move the building outside of that floodplain area. So while we're improving the encroachment to the water setback, as you can see on the sketch in front of you, we do have very limited space of where development can go. It does push the building further north to the property line. There was a question with respect to what the interior property line means, or the interior side yard setback means, sorry. And that just refers to a property line that is divided by two properties. If that was a road on the other side, that would be considered an exterior lot line. So the interior lot line just refers to the fact that the properties are divided by two properties. So we do have to move further into the interior side yard setback in order to ensure that the building is outside of the floodplain, because public safety is of the utmost importance here. With respect to the impacts, when we look at something like this, there's still enough land available that you can maneuver around the property, that you can safely maintain and access that part of the property. And for example, if you need to clean your east troughs, there's no opportunity to, or there's still opportunity to do that without trespassing. So in terms of impact, it will still function properly, and the property owner can do everything on their property that they can with the additional setback area. So there won't be any encroachment or trespassing onto the neighboring site. In terms of privacy, this one's a little bit more difficult, just because, you know, privacy in terms of, you know, what is the actual concern there? So we're still maintaining enough setback where we can maintain the property without trespassing. It still meets the height requirements, so we're not overlooking into the property outside of what's required in the height requirement. And so in terms of privacy, you know, and the fact that there is still existing vegetation, that privacy, you know, I believe is subjective in this case in terms of what the concerns are, because we're still meeting the height requirement and we can still make sure that the property can be maintained within the property boundaries. So there's no concern from that point of view. With respect to, sorry, I was making notes. There was a question with respect to mitigation measures and how those get enforced. So as per the staff report, the property, which typically isn't subject to site plan control because it's a single detached dwelling, will be subject to site plan control because it's the mechanism that the municipality has to ensure that it can enforce the mitigation measures. So the site can't get a building permit until the site plan agreement is in place to ensure that the mitigation measures are being met once the property can be developed. With respect to the lot grading and drainage, as part of the building permit stage, no one has the right to drain on somebody else's property. So at building permit stage, there will have to be a lot grading and drainage plan that is submitted with that permit to show that any post-development flows match pre-development flows. So you're not going to have any drainage going off onto the neighbor's property. It has to be contained within the site. I believe I've covered all of the concerns. I tried to capture some of the additional comments. Oh, and just to touch upon the redevelopment versus addition. So this is a redevelopment. It is a brand new building that is being constructed. I believe that the difference in terminology between the different consulting reports is that while it's a reconstruction, we are adding to the building. So it will be larger than the existing. So just to clarify some of the language there, I've made some notes to ensure that consistency happens in the future, because I can appreciate for the reader that that would have been confusing. So hopefully that provides some clarification that it is a redevelopment and it will be bigger than the original. Unless there's any questions of council, I will stop there.
Has a question, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks very much, Diana. One question was asked about the septic and the location of the septic. Could you address that, please?
So the septic, let me just have a look.
It's on the very last page.
Thank you. Just
Where's the
pulling
Bob?
that up. Very last page. The drawings show the location of the new septic, which is even closer to the property line than the proposed bylaw amendment. This is concerning. So once again, this location of the septic system is constrained by the floodplain. So we have no other opportunity to put the size of the septic system except for in this location. So again, it's going to be set back further than the house and doesn't encroach any closer into the water setback. However, because of the floodplain, it has to go in this location. There's no other option.
Does that answer your question, Deputy Armstrong?
It does, thank you. It was really on behalf of the speakers.
Any other questions from council? Go ahead, Deputy Armstrong.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Lamson. A hypothetical question, Diana.
Sure.
Privacy is a concern, a valid concern. Is it possible, given the lot characteristics and the floodplain, is it possible to move the dwelling back to the original setback of, I think it was 14.8 feet rather than the 7.5 feet? Is that even possible?
Through you, Ms. Chair, I think at the end of the day, that discussion would have to be had with the municipality. We're trying to improve the situation with the encroachment into the water setback. I don't know if the municipality would be supportive of us keeping it where it is versus encroaching a little bit closer to the side yard and further away from the water.
Yeah, for my personal view, that building moving back, whatever feet it is, I can't see on that drawing, does create some more privacy for the neighbors to the north, because they're not going to be overlooking their front yard, they're going to be overlooking the side of the building. I think the moving it back is going to create better privacy rather than less, from my own point of view. Okay. Any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, through you, Mayor, for the sake of privacy, is there any way we could shrink the building on that northern part by 5 or 6 feet? Would give them the same setback as they had previously or close to it?
So through the chair, the intent is to keep the size of the dwelling because it's going from seasonal to permanent at the size that it is proposed. And as I mentioned before, because with the setbacks still allowing for proper maintenance and access without encroachment. We believe from a planning perspective that there won't be any further impacts to the neighboring property.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anyone, any other questions? Councillor Braber.
Thank you. Through your mayor, this is a general comment and question to staff. It appears that the applicant's gone through the process. He's jumping through the necessary hoops, so to speak. Is there an opportunity when preparing a site application to perhaps address any of the issues raised by Michelle? Is there any opportunity to mitigate any of those concerns in the site plan stage, if at all? That's just mainly a general question.
Thank you very much. I think Adele will probably be the one to answer that. Go ahead, Adele.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it is possible to include clauses that would look after some of the protections or concerns that were addressed here today. However, we may not be able to capture them all, but we will look at putting in some conditions that would protect more so the neighboring property owner in terms of the distance between the dwelling and their property line. Maybe more vegetation could be planted there. I'm not sure, but we would have to discuss that with our external planning consultant. And I also want to provide council some information in terms of the environmental impact study and the comments made by the neighboring property owner. They had some concerns with the number of trees that have been cut down on the property. And I think it would be beneficial for DM Wells to provide some comments to see if everything's been adhered to in the EIS with some of the demolition and taking down of the trees on the property. We want to make sure that it is in accordance with the EIS that was submitted to us.
I think, Diana, would you like to comment on that?
Through you, Mr. Chair, we can absolutely do that. We'll speak with the applicant and our biologists in that regard.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Thank you, everyone, for all your comments and all your questions, and hopefully we've got some answers to people and a method of moving forward. Okay, we can move on now. I would entertain a motion to reconvene our regular council meeting. Councillor Cadigan for a mover, Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 7 of our agenda, which is business arising out of our statutory public meeting. We go on to 7.1, and Derek Bertram, our planning technician, would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, there was a public meeting held for file number 2404 for James Langer. At this time, staff are recommending that council receive the report from the external planning consultant, Chris Jones, and that council direct staff to prepare a zoning bylaw amendment for council's consideration.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone have a question or comment, or we're prepared to make a motion? Councillor Franzen.
I'll make motion in support of the staff's two recommendations.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on now to item 7.2 of our agenda, and Derek Bertram, our planning technician, would you please introduce this file?
Thank you. Through you again, Mr. Mayor. Subsequent to the public meeting held for application 2405 for Melachilose and Eakin, staff are recommending that the council receive the report from the external planning consultant, Chris Jones, and further council direct staff to prepare a site plan agreement, and upon execution of the agreement and submission of an updated set of building plans, staff prepare a zoning bylaw amendment for consideration, which would include a holding provision. The removal of the hold may be lifted upon confirmation that development is compliant with Ontario Regulations 6/24 and 7/24 regarding the protection of the black ash on site.
Okay, thank you very much. Anyone? Go ahead. Adele Arbor.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would suggest, based on the comments we've received from the public this afternoon and the pending comments coming back from DM Wells, that we defer the recommendation that Mr. Jones had in his report. And once we get the information, we'll provide another report to council
Okay.
and provide a recommendation at that time.
Yeah, this final's been, someone else, go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
I would go ahead and make that motion to defer this, pending further work by staff and the consultant, and to bring it back to future council meeting quickly.
Councilor Caddy, go ahead. Seconded. Okay. Any other conversations? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Okay. Thank you very much. Okay, we can move on to item 8 of our agenda, which is presentations. 8.1. Betsy from Dillon Consulting, would you like to speak to this item?
Hear me okay?
I could hear you a little bit. Yep, there we go.
Great, thank you. Next slide, please. Today, I'm going to provide a background on a study we've been doing for the county on uploading responsibility of garbage collection from the townships to the county. So I'll provide some background on the project and talk about the consolidated approach that we looked at that includes a number of items that are listed there. And then pass it to Carrie Snoddy, who will close off the presentation.
Okay.
Next slide, please. So our project started last summer, where we started off with taking a look at the current systems that are in place at each of the townships and the programs that are involved with at the county level. We had consultations throughout the project with representatives from the townships, with the Waste Management Committee and county staff. And today I'm here to talk about task 4, which is the findings from our consolidated approach. Should we have direction to proceed with the project, we would initiate tasks 5 and 6 to look at how a consolidated approach could work from an implementation perspective, and then document those findings in our report. Next slide, please. So this chart provides an overview of how much garbage we're talking about. And so this shows the quantities of garbage that were collected both curbside and at the depot within the county and in all 8 townships. So there's about 11,000 tons of garbage that was generated, about 7,000 from the curbside, and then about 3,500 from the depot. Next slide, please. In our initial round of interviews with township representatives, we had a discussion on the strengths, the opportunities, and the threats associated with uploading responsibility to the county for garbage collection. So the next few slides provides a summary of that. And so in terms of strengths, what we heard back from the township representatives is that the Clear Bag program has been an effective program. It has become easier as the program has matured over time, and that enforcement works to help drive the behavior that is seeking to increase waste diversion. Same with the bag tag program. It has also been easier as the program has evolved and has shown to improve diversion rates. Staff commented that there's good relationships between the private waste collection contractor and staff. Next slide, please. In terms of issues and challenges with equipment, the contractor, when there was noted that there is not a lot of backup equipment, and so if there are delays, if there are breakdowns or equipment issues, it could cause significant delays in collection. Animals getting into bags or bins that are left at the transfer station, and then the associated cost and time that townships are responsible for cleaning up that waste. And then in customer service, there was concerns. Some townships commented that there have been complaints regarding the county's customer service for the recycling program, and that the county would really need to strengthen the communication to residents to prevent complaints from going back to the individual townships. Next slide, please. In terms of opportunities, it was acknowledged that should it be uploaded to the county, that there could be some freeing up of staff time who previously would have spent a lot of effort on handling complaints, because that would now be uploaded as a responsibility to the county. Township staff, they do tend to be that first point of contact for complaints. In terms of in-house efficiencies, there was a lot of interest at that time. Again, these were done back in the summer about what sort of efficiencies could be gained. And then education, again, the concern of who is responsible for managing complaints and just making sure it's very clear that it needs to go to the county level, that all would need to be really, really well thought out. So my next slides here show about some of the assumptions for our consolidated approach, and I'm going to go into now talking about what that consolidated approach looks like. So we carried out 2 base case scenarios for this analysis. So our first base case scenario was that all 8 municipalities opt in to a consolidated approach. Our second base case was looking at 7 municipalities, noting that Cavan Monaghan had a council resolution for the township to opt out of the consolidated approach. So we did carry analysis on both of those scenarios. Another baseline assumption is that as per county council direction, that the proposed approach, the consolidated approach, would maintain the same level of service currently provided by townships, which means related to that all properties that currently receive curbside garbage collection would continue to receive collection. So in terms of number of households that we looked at who's receiving today, and they would receive the same as part of our analysis. That garbage would be collected weekly, and that clear bags would continue to be used for garbage. And here, and of importance to this township, of course, is that the townships would retain ownership and operation of their respective transfer stations. And then for the purpose, again, of looking at a consistent level of service, we developed a consistent program, which did mean some changes required for municipalities to their bag limits and or the bag tag program. And this was for the purpose of our analysis to have it all on one page and one level of service for this. Next slide, please. So this table summarizes the changes to the bag limits and the bag tag requirements that we then incorporated into our analysis. So we do note that the bag limits have been increased for the purpose of the study. And again, it was for county council direction to maintain a consistent level of service. It's not set in stone that this would be the case on how it would move forward if it does move forward. It's noted a strong promotion education program will be required to communicate the changes noted above, with specific messaging to those townships that are affected to having some changes in as well as the continued functioning of the local depots. And it will be also important to communicate the changes to customer service and who to contact. So having a simplified message of contacting the county would be seen as an improvement. So customer service inquiries, again, for Trent Lakes in particular, for the concerns at the transfer station would still be directed towards township depot staff, since the ownership and operation of the transfer station will remain with the townships. Next slide, please. We gathered all of the existing waste contracts that were to understand the potential timing for a consolidated approach. So we did look at the curbside contracts, but there's also contracts in place to haul the garbage from the depots to the disposal facility. So we looked at both. And then we looked at how some of them had options to extend the contract periods. And so some might be necessary to extend those contracts past their current allowable extension, depending on how long planning and council approval takes, and assuming that there would be a dedicated transition team in place, which I'll talk about later. So some additional considerations that are noted here, and is that right now, with the timing of how all of the contracts are currently in place, the earliest that county-led rollout could happen would be starting in January 1st, 2026. So this would assume that an RFP for a county-led garbage collection contract would be written, bid, and selected by the county, and that the contract terms and conditions of existing township contracts would require consolidation to make sure that there's enough notice provided so that the contracts are extended and terminated at the same time as the county-led contract would begin. And with regards to Blue Box transition, producers have assumed responsibility of the Blue Box program since January 1st. And so as of this date, Blue Box services at the curb and depots that were previously provided by the county have now been transitioned to Circular Materials Ontario, which is the producer responsibility organization. Townships will still be providing Blue Box services at their respective depots. Next slide. So some key points about what potential impacts could occur. So with regards to county staffing and transition requirements, the county anticipates that the staffing levels would be sufficient, but there might be some initial temporary staffing at the outset of a program transition to handle an influx of resident inquiries. It's assumed that there would be a county-led transition team in place that would help the townships in the county oversee this plan and to help implement to meet the target transition date. The changes to rates and fees, the proposed approach would be funded through taxation. That was the assumption, and that only residents that receive the service would pay for the service. And changes to bylaw, on both sides, the county and the townships would have to update the bylaws to reflect the powers of who is responsible for garbage collection and repealing and adopting the new bylaws that reference the new county bylaw, which would be required at the township bylaws. Next slide, please. It's a table here of just summarizing what some of the pros and cons could be associated with moving towards a consolidated approach. So, with the cons, there are some potential modifications to bag limits and collection days to get that same level of service across the county. There could be initial confusion about the new program, uncertainty during costs when our analysis took into costs that we had available today, and that market conditions could garner different costs once it goes out to market. So uncertainty about who's opting in or out and the efficiencies that could be gained by the number that are in or out. And in terms of pros, though, there's a single contract to negotiate, implement, and maintain a consistent program, which would equate to consistent messaging to the public and simplified customer service. There's a potential for the contractor to establish a more efficient collection route and reduce number of vehicles that would be traveling on county roads, and potential efficiency should any new waste diversion programs come into place, that it could potentially be managed under one contract. Okay, the next few slides are talking about the analysis that we had done. So first, we looked at a collection system model. That was really the purpose to look at what sort of efficiencies could be made in how garbage is collected throughout the county without the township boundaries in place. So some of the inputs that we looked at on the model is household serve, and like I said, we looked at only those those households that are currently in the program would continue to receive the service as part of our analysis. Looking at different collection route factors, so the average distance between homes and collection days, the amount of garbage and organics that are generated and expected to be handled, and information about collection vehicles. Next slide, please. So there's a number of different scenarios that we looked at, and really these are combined up because of the two base case scenarios that we looked at. So that first one was what I explained is the base case of having 7 separate collection systems, one for each township. And then in the county, scenarios 3 and 4, they look at a single tier system for the county to manage all households either under the base case scenarios 1 or 2. Number 5, we wanted to look at what if there's a certain number of townships that opt out. We wanted to look at a range of between 10 and 20,000 households as an example to demonstrate what the potential decrease in efficiencies could be if less townships are participating. Scenario 6 and 7 looked at a separate contract for a curbside organics collection program only. Scenarios 8 and 9 looked at co-collection of organics and garbage. And scenarios 10 and 11 looked at a co-collection contract from the county with garbage collected every other week. and organics collected weekly. So a number of different scenarios that we looked at, and the next slide shares what some of the findings were when it comes to potential vehicle reductions, collection vehicle reductions. So this shows where potential savings could be in terms of collection vehicles. So we compared scenarios 3 to 5 against the base case scenarios of 1 and 2. And we see that the reduction in standard vehicles ranges from between 3 and 5 vehicles, and a reduction in small vehicles, which are used to access some of the private roads, from reduction of about between 1 and 3. Some potential efficiencies looking at co-collection of organics and garbage at the county level are also shown here. So scenarios 8 and 9 were compared against the total vehicles for the scenarios of the separate collection by the townships for garbage, which is scenarios 1 and 2, and organics, which were scenarios 6 and 7. Next slide, please. So with that information, we wanted to look at what potential cost savings there could be associated with a consolidated approach. So we looked at the modeling that I just shared with you. We looked at the collection contracts and the disposal contracts that have been in place for the last few years, the amount of waste that's been managed over the last few years, collection schedule, household data, and financial statements. Next slide, please. So in terms of financial impacts to the townships, so with regards to curbside collection contracts, acknowledging that the combined value of all of the contracts in place is 1.4 million or 1.1 million without Kevin Monaghan, and that cost savings would only occur if the total is less than this amount. In terms of staffing and administration costs, like I mentioned before, no separate dedicated staff at the township levels would be, right now there's no dedicated staff that's managing contracts, and there was no separate tracking of the time spent by this staff. But we assume that townships will still handle some customer service inquiries, especially in this case at the depot transfer station levels, and no reduction in staffing levels is anticipated. And so no cost savings related to township staffing is anticipated in our analysis. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the potential annual savings to the county under different scenarios. So obviously the more savings are in place if all townships opt in, but then under the scenario column, we show the number of households decreasing, and then the cost savings on the far right also showing to decrease there. So there, when we look at the different contract prices and the savings that are in place, when it comes to households, the potential per household saving is between $14 and $18, and that the savings could potentially be used to fund the implementation of an organics program or potentially reduce individual property tax rate for waste management services. Next slide. So in terms of other financial impacts, so for bin collection and haulage, the county would also take on the cost of hauling transfer station bins from the depots to the disposal location. So in respect to that, no cost savings are anticipated. It's the same program that's being operated. From the data received, the exact cost wasn't possible to calculate, but we estimated based on the quantities and the per bin unit costs that were described in the contracts. And so we've estimated about $450,000 for the bin collection and haulage component of managing garbage within the county. In terms of staffing and administrative costs, county would assume the responsibility for maintaining the contract and handling customer service inquiries, that they estimate during that first 6 months of the program that there would be a more volume of customer inquiries, so there might need to be some temporary staffing. So there's an estimate of a half full-time equivalent that would be required to help out with that initial phase, and that this would be further hashed out during the transition planning and the development of a staffing plan. Next slide, please. So we were asked to take a look at what the potential impacts could be with respect to co-collecting garbage with organics. So we did a high-level annual cost estimate based on information that we had readily available and information that was publicly available as well. And the cost estimate of the potential organics contract would be in the range of $800,000 to $1 million. And the different scenarios are shown here on the different types of contract types and what that overall cost to household would be. So potential savings for the household would be in the range of $18 to $20 is based on our estimation. Next slide. We went back to representatives with all of the townships in January of this year to share our initial findings of the analysis that we had done and to get some feedback, which is documented in the report. So we had feedback that talked about potential efficiencies with what the proposed approach might bring. If there's opportunities to provide input, if it does move forward, and to provide input on how that transition could occur and how the program could occur. Opportunities, there were inquiries about if townships could opt in or out later at a later date. And again, the theme of and the concern regarding who would handle resident inquiries and miscollections is something that was brought up again. And lastly, I'm going to pass back to Carrie now, who's going to talk about the last slide here.
Thanks, Betsy. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Carrie, the manager of waste management for the county. So I have a resolution here that I'm going to go over with you, but I first just wanted to give a bit more background and context as to, why we're doing this study, why we're looking at this and bringing this for you to consider today. So this came about by 2 service delivery reviews that the county had undertaken with recommendations from the consultants doing those service delivery reviews that we should look at uploading garbage to the county to see if there were potential cost savings and efficiencies in doing that, in moving it from 8 separate contracts into 1 for the county. And so Betsy and Dylan Consulting has been working on this study over the last year or so with county and township staff, and this was presented to county council on February 21st of this year, this presentation and report. They made a resolution that we come out to each of the townships to present the information and gather feedback as to whether you're interested in continuing and moving forward with this or just opting out and not participating any further. So this is the second presentation that we have completed so far out of all of the townships. We did present to North Kawartha Council a couple of weeks ago. Their decision was to opt out and not participate in the study moving forward. They're not interested in uploading to the county. And as Betsy commented earlier, Cavan Monaghan is on the same page. They made a resolution before this study even commenced that they were not interested in uploading garbage. So that's the situation as it stands today. And we understand that a lot of the information in this presentation may not feel relevant to Trent Lakes particularly because there is a lot of curbside information in it, curbside collection of garbage, and that's where the major cost savings were associated. There weren't a significant cost savings anticipated from uploading the transportation of the garbage bins from the transfer stations to the waste management facility. So that all being said, this is the resolution that we received from County Council. So they've directed us to present to the local municipalities and request a motion. So A, that the township supports inclusion of the local municipality to the implementation costing process, noting it doesn't mean that you're committed to uploading garbage at this time, but just that you're interested in moving forward with looking at more costing to see, what specific townships would be in and what that would look like. And then the other option is that the township does not wish to be included in the implementation or costing process, and that county staff report back to county council for decision regarding the engagement results from the townships and referral to implementation phase costing if applicable. So that is the resolution, and we're open to any questions, feedback from you.
Okay, thank you very much, Carrie, for that part of the presentation, and thank you, Betsy. Does anyone on council have any questions? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you very much. Several
several comments, actually 4 comments. Thanks, Betsy and Carrie. I know this has been a big job, and I am generally a supporter of at least researching the opportunities for consolidation. We should always be looking for efficiencies and cost savings in what we do. But as Carrie said, you probably see a lot of confused looks here at our council table because we don't have curbside recycling, period. We have 4 transfer stations, and our involvement in this is the haulage from the garbage from there to, its end, not its end, but its next location. So there's really, as you said, no benefit to us. I will make these comments though. First of all, we did have a bin haulage contract shared with the county. Several years ago, we uncoupled from that, and there were significant savings. So our experience in working with the county on a joint contract is not particularly appealing and hasn't proven to be cost effective. Number 2, the assumption that people will call the county for garbage is just totally incorrect. People have no relationship with the county. They relate to their township, and that's where they direct all of their questions, complaints mostly, and concerns. So that assumption just doesn't hold water. The third thing, and I mentioned this at county, if you go back to, on my package, it's page 211 of my agenda, where it talks about the number of bags. You could just put that up, please. Who has it?
She's doing.
Oh, sorry. Yes, thank you. You'll notice that in almost every single instance, the proposal is to increase the number of bags per week. That is absolutely the wrong direction. It is so counter to what we in Trent Lakes have been trying to do for the past 8 or 10 years. We led the charge with clear bags. So I think we were early adopters on many of these things. So that slide to me is just total anathema to the idea of continuing to reduce our waste. So I know those are harsh comments, but I did see this, the first presentation through, and my opinions haven't changed. So I'll be ready to make a motion whenever others have commented and asked questions.
Okay, any other comments or questions? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Yeah, just a couple comments. I also believe that it should remain at the local level. We often get calls and we make comments at cottage association meetings, and the expectation is that the local township takes care of the municipal household waste and the control of the number of bags that are issued to all of our residents. I also am very leery about uploading to county. It reduces the need for local municipalities. It may be one step towards regional government. That's one of my major concerns. I don't think that's a good idea. That's all I have at this time.
Okay. Thank you very much, Councillor Franzen, for your comments. Any other comments? Go ahead, Councillor Brayberg.
Thank you, through you, Mayor. I agree 100% with Councillor Franzen's last comments. I had 7 questions that are down to 4 after listening to Deputy Mayor Armstrong's comments and questions. I don't know how you want to handle it, Mayor.
Go ahead,
do you want me to just
have your 3 questions. Yep,
roll through?
please do.
Okay. Thanks very much, Betsy and Carrie, for your presentation on the study. Being fairly new to the council, whenever I see presentations that have studies and whatnot that involve municipalities in Peterborough County, what I specifically look for, as I am a councillor for the municipality of Trent Lakes, is I would like to see an overview generally of the study, and then a specific area where how it impacts Trent Lakes, as opposed to a general high-level overview. It's hard for me to extract specifically how Trent Lakes benefits, how much money it's going to cost Trent Lakes residents. So I was sort of disappointed with this certain aspects of the study. In the project background on task 3, where it's, if you can go back to that, Jesse, please. So project background. Page 205 of the agenda. While we're moving to that, I'll ask the question. It states in the in task 3 box that staff and council consultations took place, and the timeline for that was July 2023 to December 2023. When did we or when did you do the consultations? Because I wasn't aware of any consultations, unless I missed it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, we held interviews. So this is combining a number of different things here. And sorry, it should probably reflect to be up to February 2024. But township representatives were consulted with in July 2023 and January 2024. So we received names of township staff involved in waste management to have those conversations with. And then we've met with Waste Management Committee several times throughout the project, and then County Council in February this year.
Okay, so when it says council consultations, that was county?
That's right. And then now for the next 2 months or so, it's township councils. That was the direction we were provided to present to each of the townships.
Okay. Do you think it might have been wise to include the individual municipalities as well in the council consultations? The only reason I ask this is you're coming before council today with your study and your presentation, and you're asking for a resolution at the end. And this is sort of the first that we've heard about it, and we're, apprised of what the study entailed. So do you think it might have benefited to consult with the individual municipalities, the councils?
That comment is noted. Maybe I can defer to the county staff as we were following direction on what county council had asked us to do.
Yeah, through the mayor. So this is Carrie here. I would say that was something that was tossed around early on in the project. We were looking for the best way to undertake this project. And I know that there were conversations at county council when we had brought the original RFP and scope of the study forward of whether maybe we should be going to the township councils first, and just the direction that we received from county council at the beginning of the project was to undertake the project in this manner. We did also send the draft RFP and study specifications to township staff as well before the project was undertaken. So unfortunately that's the way the project was undertaken, and I guess that's all I can really suggest as why we did it this way.
Okay.
One more question?
Couple.
Okay.
Thank
Oh,
you.
you're adding them on now. Go ahead, Councilor Braver.
Just under the next page is how much garbage are we talking about under that heading? Are you able to comment as to whether it is more of a cost savings to Trent Lakes to be serviced by depot or otherwise? Would cost savings if the municipality were to opt in? Would this be a cost savings for the municipality?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, in our analysis, we assumed that the cost for the direct hauling from the depots to the disposal facility would remain the same. So if you look at the financial aspect on that element only, then there would be no change there.
Okay, thank you.
Just historically, that's not been the case.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Councilor Braver.
Thank you.
Was you done? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, I have a couple of comments. If somehow we could ever get organics hauled with our garbage, out of every one of our transfer stations, I think this would be an advantage to us, but I don't see that happening. At present, we only have a very limited amount of organics that we can, our source separated organics that we can send down to the county. That would be the only advantage I would see, is if we could actually reduce our amount of, because I think it's 20 or 21% of our weight in our garbage bags are source separated organics that could be going somewhere else. At present, we just can't do that. We don't have, the county doesn't have the capability. So maybe with the new sites in Peterborough and the county, maybe that could happen. But I mean, we've led in diversion. We're clear bag people. I mean, we were at a 59 or 60% diversion rate. And some of this seems like we're going way backwards on our numbers. And that would be problematic for me. But, and I don't see any way that we can have, we need to negotiate our contract with our hauler immediately, I believe, because it looks like it expires at the end of April. If that's true, I hope it isn't. So we have a reasonably good contract with our hauler, and it works very well for our 4 transfer stations. So I'm not sure that would be the same. Those are my comments. Okay. Any other questions or comments? I'm seeing none. I want to thank you both, Betsy and Carrie, for your presentation and all the information. I think we are short on some information for the municipality of Trent Lakes, and that's unfortunate. And I think Deputy Mayor Armstrong was, go ahead.
I'd just like to make one comment about organic. We do live in a very rural municipality. A lot of people do backyard composting, and a lot of people have purchased the tabletop composters as well. It's not like we live in a very urban municipality where you wouldn't have any space to do backyard composting. So
Very, very good comment, Councillor Franzen. I think we lead in that as well as in our digesters, that or the composters or countertop ones that we're putting out. And there's still people looking for them, so there's more people taking them. That's
and just a further comment through you, Mayor, is we've been the leader in the county with the tabletop composters. We were the first municipality within the county to provide that equipment, and others are following suit. So I think that's kudos to this municipality.
absolutely, yes. Thank you for that comment. Any other questions or comments? Do not put strawberries in your outside composter. Bears love to eat strawberries and compost. Okay. Now, is anyone prepared to make a motion? I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Go ahead.
Yes, I will make the motion that Trent Lakes Municipality does not wish to be included in the implementation costing process. And I would add to that, nor do we wish to be included in any consolidated or uploading program.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? I see Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. Thank you very much, Carrie and Betsy. We can now move on to item 9 of our agenda, which is delegations. Oh, sorry, my apologies, Carrie. I think you have another presentation.
I do.
Go right ahead, please.
Okay, so we're now going to jump into, you made a nice segue there with your comments on organics. So we're going to jump into a county organics program project that we've been looking at over the last couple of years alongside the garbage upload study. So I'll be presenting the options we've been looking at and seeking feedback from you on an organics program as well. Next slide, please. So first, I just wanted to talk about why we are looking at a county organics program and why we should implement more organics diversion in the county. So an organics program countywide is an initiative outlined in the county's waste management master plan, which is a document approved by county council that outlines what initiatives and programs that the county will do. There's a goal in that plan to meet 60% waste diversion for all of the county by 2030. And we estimate that if we did divert organics countywide, we would meet that goal. We estimate that there would be up to 4,500 tons of organics diverted each year if there was a countywide program. This could extend the lifespan of our landfill by 2 to 3 years. There's currently 10 years left of capacity right now at the county city waste management facility that the waste goes to in the county. And future options will be very expensive. They could range anywhere from $10 to $50 million once that lifespan is complete. So we want to extend that lifespan as long as possible. There's also resident demand in the county for an organics program. So back in 2021, when we started looking at organics, we had a survey out and there were 3,000 people that responded. And 60% of those people strongly agreed that the county should have an organics collection program. Many neighboring municipalities have implemented successful programs. So City of Peterborough just implemented a successful program in the fall of last year. Northumberland County has an extensive program, and City of Kawartha Lakes also has council approval to implement a program this year. The province may also ban food waste from landfill by 2030. So this was part of their 2018 Made in Ontario Environment Plan, and within the last year, they've recently recommitted to this, that they are potentially going to ban food waste from landfill by 2030. So by implementing a program ahead of that, we'll be ahead of the curve if that does get implemented by the province. A program will also significantly reduce the county's greenhouse gas emissions by removing organics from landfill. And there are opportunities for efficiencies with other material collection if we did move forward with garbage upload or with leaf and yard collection. Next slide. So county staff looked originally at 3 different options that were presented to county council. So option 1 is a curbside countywide program. Option 2 was a countertop composting program, and then option 3 was a hybrid of the 2 together. When options were presented at county council, another option was suggested for a curbside program in urban areas only, which has been added to the presentation. And I specifically added information on adding additional Molochs at Trent Lakes depots to this presentation, as that was something that was also brought up that Trent Lakes may be interested in. So we'll talk about that. So option 1 is a curbside organics program. So again, this option doesn't involve Trent Lakes unless Trent Lakes wanted to implement curbside collection of organics. So this right now is considering weekly curbside collection for current residential and commercial properties that have garbage and recycling curbside collection. The county would purchase and deliver green bins and kitchen catchers to residents. The organics will be processed at the city's new organics facility, which is located right next to the landfill on Bensford Road. And we could potentially co-collect with other materials, resulting in a lower impact on roads throughout the county. Next slide. Pros of this option: it's a familiar option for residents. They are likely more familiar with this than countertop composters, depending on which township they live in. You can add more items in a curbside program than a countertop composting option. So for example, pet waste, fats and grease, or then a backyard composter as well. It's easier to measure diversion because you have weights that you can track rather than a calculation or estimation. It could encourage a partnership with the City of Peterborough. And again, we could co-collect with other materials. Cons of this option: it's more expensive than a countertop composting option or other options that we're considering. Potential for more greenhouse gas emissions. Not every resident can participate. So throughout the county, including Trent Lakes and a large area in Havelock, Belmont, Methuen, there is not curbside collection. So it's about 10,000 households that wouldn't participate in this option. And then another con would be wildlife concerns of having green bins out at the curb potentially. Next slide. Option 2 that we looked at was a countertop composting option. So as you were saying, Trent Lakes has been an innovator in this area, setting an example for the other townships, and residents are familiar with these. So in this option, the county would provide countertop composters to all households in the county free of charge. We would put out an RFP to include delivery, customer service, extended warranty, and maintenance. So all of those costs would be covered. There would be an extensive ongoing promotion education campaign where we would do workshops with residents, make sure everyone knew how to use them. And we're suggesting this could be phased in over a 3-year period. Next slide, please. So pros of this option, it's less expensive than a curbside program. There would be lower greenhouse gas emissions and less impacts on roads because residents are handling their material in their own home. Residents, as you know, can benefit from the byproduct of a countertop composter. They can use it as fertilizer, different things. The county would be a leader, first in Ontario, to implement a program at that scale to that many households if we did move forward with this option. There would potentially be less wildlife concerns. All households in the county could participate and they would all have the same program. And this is not contingent on the garbage upload study. And there's also been very positive results from pilot programs at townships so far. Cons for this option, there are less items that can go in than in a curbside program, like the pet waste and fats and grease. There may be more education needed for residents, and it may be considered more work for residents. It's also harder to measure diversion, and the units would need to be replaced over time. Next slide. So option 3 was a hybrid option of the first two. So it would be a combination of curbside and countertop composters for the residents that don't have curbside collection. So it would include curbside collection for the majority of households in the county that already receive garbage and blue box collection, and we would provide countertop composters to the residents that don't. Next slide. So pros of this option, again, all households could participate. Cons, it's the most expensive option, and different programs could cause some confusion for residents that are being managed by the county, and households may want to participate in a different program than what's available to them. Next slide, please. So option 4, this was an option that was talked about at the county council meeting when the original 3 options were brought. So this option isn't really recommended by county staff, but we're looking at it. So this would be curbside collection in urban areas only throughout the county. And so just as an example for this presentation, because we had the data available, we currently collect leaf and yard waste from urban areas in the county, about 7,250 households. So we're using this as an example of how this could look. Again, this would not include curbside collection in Trent Lakes unless that was something you were interested in. In this option, based on this amount of households, diversion could be up to 1,200 tons per year if we did receive full participation in this type of program, versus the 4,500 tons we estimate if it's a county-wide program. Next slide. So pros of this option, it's the least expensive option. Cons, again, it's a lower diversion, so there would be minimal landfill site life extension. We anticipate there would be a low participation rate in a program like this, just based on our own experience as well as experience with other municipalities. So when you have a curbside program only in certain areas, it's hard to provide incentives for residents to want to participate. You can't lower the bag limit. You can't move to every other week garbage collection, things that would kind of get residents who may be hesitant on to participate and get them on board. So as an example, we have a curbside program available in the town of Bridgenorth and Selwyn that's been in place since 2006. And despite door-to-door education campaigns and ongoing promotion education, the participation rate is very low. It's only at about 11% of residents that have that program that choose to participate in it. So that's one of the reasons we don't recommend this type of program. Another reason is customer service challenges and frustration. So there will be people who want to be part of the program who aren't included, and vice versa. And you run into challenges with how you tax for this service. You tax all residents, and that would mean some residents are paying for a service they're not receiving. And if you tax only the residents that would receive this service, it would be very expensive for them because it's a small number of households that the money would be distributed to. And the other challenge is there's just no efficiencies or economies of scale with this option because it's in pockets throughout the county. Next slide. So something that we included for this presentation is the pricing for potential additional mollucks in Trent Lakes, if this is also an option that you would be interested in. So previously, before the city of Peterborough built their new organics facility, we had a limit on the amount of organics that we could send to be processed there. That, however, isn't the case now that that new facility is up and running. There is no limit. So if Trent Lakes was interested, an option could be to add additional mollusks to the depots in Trent Lakes. So the cost per mollusk is roughly $5,000 each, and the cost for installation is approximately about $3,000. The cost to service an additional site annually based on our existing program and adding those sites onto the existing routes would be about $5,000 to $10,000 per year, depending on how busy the site is. If you started a route from scratch, it would likely be more expensive than this, but because we already have the route in place that goes up to Buckhorn, we could potentially add on to that route. So this is what we have for potentially each site, depending on what you would be interested. So to add 4 mollusks at each of the following sites, Bobcaygeon, well, all of them would be about $24,000 to add the mollusks. We anticipate Bobcaygeon would be more expensive to service throughout the year because it would likely be more busier than the other sites, so about $10,000 per year to service. And then Crystal Lake and Cavendish, if you wanted those sites added, it would be potentially about $5,000 per year to service those sites. Next slide, please. So some considerations for the different options. If we did move forward with some sort of county-wide option, participation would likely benefit if garbage collection was reduced to every other week, or if there were lower bag limits for curbside collection or whatever residents are able to bring to the depot sites. Strong promotion and education program would be required for all options. A spring or summer startup time would likely be ideal for a countywide program because then we could reach all of the seasonal residents and educate everybody at once. And no matter what option we go forward with, we are planning on continuing to offer mollusk drop-off at the existing depots. Next slide, please. So for the different options, these are the estimates for each option of the average annual cost for the first 10 years of the program. So these estimates are based on the garbage upload study, the pricing of programs in similar municipalities. They also include CPI and fuel escalations over the 10 years. For the curbside option, they include purchase of bins, delivery of bins, and processing fees to process the organics, as well as promotion and education. So it's not cheap to operate a green bin program, as you can see, or some sort of countywide organics program. So option 1, we're estimating about $3 million a year. Option 2, which would be the countertop composter for everybody option, just under $2 million a year. The hybrid option, where we would do curbside collection as well as the countertop composters, over $3 million a year. And then the urban area only collection would be about $809,000 per year. Next slide, please. So in conclusion, when this information was presented to the county's Waste Management Committee, they recommended County Council consider option 1, which was the curbside organics collection option. And then when these options were brought to County Council was looking for township feedback before making any decision on any sort of program going forward. And next slide, please. So we have another resolution for you that we received from County Council. and that is that county staff be directed to present to the local municipalities to coincide with the waste upload study presentation date, requesting a motion from each council to be sent to county council indicating A or B below. So A, or 1, is that the township supports the county continuing to investigate a countywide organics program and provides direction to the county as to what methods of organics collection they would like considered, including curbside for all, curbside for urban only, or other considerations. Or B, or 2, that the township does not wish to proceed with a countywide organics program. And either way, county staff will report back to county council with all of this information. And that is the end of my presentation.
Okay, Carrie, thank you very much. Does anyone on council have any questions of Carrie? Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thanks, Mayor Lamson. And Carrie, you'll think that I took my grumpy old lady pills this morning, but I'll make this very brief. Option 1, curbside collection. Option 3, hybrid. And option 4, urban only, have zero relevance to Trent Lakes. And I'm not sure that we want to be subsidizing that or other municipalities, because there's a very big price tag attached to that. Option 2, the food cycler. We know that 5 out of 8 municipalities already have the program. They managed it in-house. In all cases, and I think you heard this feedback at county, it should never be given away because you need the person to have some skin in the game and pay for it. So that's how the program has been set up. I think if the other 3 municipalities want to join in, they should. The only role for the county in that I see possibly is a volume purchasing program. If you were able to get them cheaper than the individual municipalities could, that's terrific. But leave the municipalities to run the program. So that the only thing that leaves is the Molochs, and I think that deserves further consideration. The one that we currently have, and I thought it was at Bob Cajun. It's in Buckhorn. Okay, you can see it, but I haven't used it. We collected 52 tons last year. So imagine what if we promote that as well as add the other transfer stations, that diverts a tremendous amount of waste out of the garbage. And as we all know, organics is somewhere between 40 and 50% of the garbage. So from a purely Trent Lakes perspective, and looking after our pocketbooks, I think the Molochs is the only option that has any viability for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
I think the Molochs are a really good idea. I agree with Deputy Mayor that the other options are not viable for Trent Lakes.
I've seen some other options for Molochs too that may be more appropriate for Trent Lakes. They're a little smaller. They come, you just take a bag away, it goes on a smaller truck. You can collect from 3 or 4 of our transfer stations at the same time. So there are some other options for Molochs. They don't have to be that great big grandiose thing that we do have at our Buckhorn transfer station that can collect a fair amount of weight. And you don't want source separated organic sitting around for months at a time. Any other comments or questions? I'm seeing none. Is there anyone prepared to make some form of a motion towards this presentation? Councillor Franzen, go ahead.
Motion 2, that the township does not wish to proceed with the county-wide organic program, and that the county staff report back to the county council with respect to the county organics program options at the same time as the report back to the decision that will respect the garbage upload study engagement results with townships and referral to the implementation phase costing if applicable.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Braper for a seconder. Okay, any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you very much, Carrie, for your presentation.
Thank you.
We can move on to item 9 of our agenda, which is delegations. We have none. We can move on to staff reports. which is Public Works. Evan Grieger, would you like to speak to item 10.1.1? Was there a traffic bylaw update? Please.
Absolutely. Thank you, Mayor Lambshead. Through you, Mayor, to members of council. Before you today is just a report regarding 2 small minor changes to the traffic bylaw. Well, not changes, additions to the traffic bylaw. When we did the bylaw back in 2022, it was always intended that we could, review or find other areas that we may have missed. As previously there was multiple smaller bylaws for this consolidated one. So to the 2 sections that were brought to our attention, and just like to thank the cottage associations, as they were the ones that raised these, was Crystal Lake from Allen's Alley all the way to the end, as well as Allen's Alley from Galway Road to Crystal Lake Road. So it's just changing those to properly reflect. They're already posted at 50 kilometers an hour, so just to have that reflected within the bylaws to allow enforcement through the OPP.
Okay, excellent. Thank you very much. Anyone have any comments or questions for Evan? Anyone be prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Cadigan.
Comment that I'm in favor of this. The area we're talking about had about 3 or 4 different speed limits going through there. On a related topic, there was a historic motion before I was on council for a safety zone in Ketchcoma in Cavendish Township. I'm wondering if you've heard any updates on that, whether that's proceeded beyond county council.
Thank you, Councillor Cadigan. Through your, Mayor Lambshead. I do believe I don't know for sure, to be honest with you. I can follow up with my counterparts. I don't want to give you misinformation. I believe they had reviewed it and decided against it, but I'm not 100% sure.
Last I heard, they're studying it.
Yeah, so I can definitely follow up with the county regarding that.
Yep, good. Thank you very much. Okay, is anyone prepared to make a motion? Councillor Cadigan, go ahead.
Motion to receive the report.
A little second half on that.
I can't read the second half.
Well, the second half says council support the amendment to Schedule D.
And support the amendment.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? See Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, Evan Grieger. We can move on now to item 10.2 of our agenda, which is recreation facilities. We have none. 10.3 is fire and emergency services. We have none. We can go to 10.4, which is building and planning, and 10.4.1. Derek Bertram, our planning technician, would you like to speak to this item, please?
Thank you, Mayor Lambshead. On today's agenda, there is a municipal appraisal form for consent file B79-23 submitted by agent Susan Harrison of Principal Places and Spaces Consulting on behalf of the owner, Cheryl Pearson. The subject land is located on Galway Road, and the proposed severed lands exhibit a driveway to an adjacent property, and the purpose of the application is a lot addition in favor of 1062 Galway Road to provide legal access onto the benefiting parcel. The severed lands are zoned rural, and the benefiting lands are zoned rural residential. To avoid a resulting split zone lot, a zoning bylaw amendment is required and will recognize the measured lot frontage and lot area of the benefiting lands. Further, if the reference plan confirms that any portion of the traveled road is located on the severed or benefiting lot, that the lands occupied by the traveled road, including any additional land measuring 10 meters from the center line of the traveled road, be transferred to the municipality as a road dedication. Staff have reviewed the application and recommend that council support the consent application subject to the conditions of a zoning bylaw amendment and a road dedication if applicable.
Okay, thank you very much for your presentation. Does anyone have any comments or questions? Seeing none. Is anyone prepared to make a motion?
A motion to support with the recommendations of staff.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seeing Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I see none. I will call to the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can now move on to 10.4.2 of our agenda, which is Derek Bertram once again. Please introduce your file.
Thank you, Mayor Lambshead, and through you, the municipality has received an application for a removal of a holding provision from Agent Gary McMurtry for the property known municipally as 32 Fire Route 172 on behalf of the property owner Sylvester Chang. The subject property is within an area of influence of a closed landfill site, and the comprehensive zoning bylaw requires the owner to fulfill certain conditions prior to the development of these lands in accordance with section 4.15.4 of the comprehensive zoning bylaw. The agent has provided a D4 assessment prepared by EXP in support of the removal of the holding provision to permit the construction of a mudroom and covered entranceway to the existing single-family dwelling. The removal of the hold symbol in accordance with the Planning Act, Section 36, does not require a public meeting, however, requires that the notice be given to council's intention to pass an amending bylaw to remove the hold from the property. Staff provided this notice to property owners within 120 meters of the subject property on March 12th. Subsequent to staff's review of the D4 assessment and no concerns or objections received from the public or agencies, staff are recommending the removal of the holding symbol from the subject lands. And a bylaw is on today's agenda for council's approval.
Okay, thank you very much, Derek. Does anyone on council have any questions of Derek regarding this file? Go ahead, Councilor Braybrick.
Thank you. Prepared to make a motion to receive the report. Council supports staff's recommendation.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that? Councilor Cattigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm not seeing any. I have one comment. It's amazing that we have to go through all these steps, but I do realize it's in infants. There's like a 30-foot straight up granite ridge before you get to that property. There's no way it's got any effect on that Global transfer station just by measurement alone. Okay, that's my comment. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. We can move on now to 10.4.3 of our agenda, which is Adele Arbor, our planner. Would you like to speak to this item?
Yes, and thank you. Through you, Mayor Lambshead. This report is in regards to the development charges bylaw. As a result of the March 19th council resolution, the draft development charges bylaws were revised to reflect the recommendations of council and are on today's council agenda for consideration and approval. A separate bylaw for each service area is being imposed. Based on legislation, the new development charges are in effect on the date of approval, which would be today, April 2nd. This approval will ensure that the new DCs are enacted prior to the expiry of the current DC bylaw, which expires on April 16th, 2024. Mandatory reduction of DCs will take place within the first 5 years, with year 1 reduced to 80%, year 2, 85%, and so forth, with 100% development charge collected in year 5 and all subsequent years. In addition, the mandatory indexing will occur on April 2nd each year beginning in 2025. It is therefore being recommended that council receive the report from the planner regarding development charge bylaws for information, and further that council support the following 4 development charge bylaws, being the development charge for services related to a highway, fire protection services, parks and recreation services, and library services, and further that council approve these 4 development charge bylaws, which are on today's council agenda for consideration.
Okay, thank you very much, Adele Arbor. Does anyone have any questions of Adele? I'm seeing none. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead. Deputy Mayor.
I'll take your, just a quick question, Adele. The current ones expire April 16th. Is there a reason why we wouldn't just make the effective date April 16th?
Through you, Ms. Mayor Lambshead, there is no real reason. It's just that we're doing it in advance. The bylaws are ready, and the bylaws indicate that the previous bylaw will be repealed, and this will be in effect April 2nd.
Would most people, and I'm not in the building business at the moment, would most people understand that the existing ones expire April 16th? And would we be better to wait until April 16th, or is that just simply not particularly well known?
Mr. Mayor, that's not particularly well known. And whenever we did put notices out that the new bylaw would be in effect, when council considered it, there was reports that came to council. So I think it is well known. April 2nd, the bylaws were coming forward.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions? Seeing none, is anyone prepared to make a motion? Seeing Deputy Mayor Armstrong, go ahead.
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make the motion that we receive the report from the planner regarding the development charge bylaws for information that we support the 4 development charge bylaws, which our planner has identified, and that we approve, we will later approve these 4 bylaws.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Seeing Councillor Cadigan for a second. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on now to item 10.5 of our agenda, which is finance. We have none. 10.6 is administration. 10.6.1, Donna Taggart, our CAO treasurer. Could you speak to this item?
Yes, thank you, and through you. So before you is a report requesting the use of service delivery funds for the completion of the compensation review currently underway. So the 2024 Trent Lakes budget included $6,000 for Gallagher Benefit Services to complete a compensation review of all non-union positions. This review has now been completed, and it has included the comparison to 14 other municipalities, assessing the municipality's competitiveness, the development of updated job rates and steps in comparison to market data, and a test of the proposed rates for pay equity compliance. So during the review, there were some inconsistencies identified, and these need to be further investigated through the completion of a more in-depth job evaluation that is based on job descriptions in conjunction with the market review. Gallagher will use up-to-date job descriptions to evaluate points in each position and provide 2 options for updated band structures. So with some underspending from the first part of the review, staff are looking for support to use up to $8,750 of service delivery reserve funds for the completion of the additional work. The consultant has committed to only billing for the actual time required for this additional review. So the ask today is that council received a report on the job evaluation market analysis review for information, and that council approved the use of service delivery reserves for the completion of a full job evaluation by Gallagher Benefit Services to a maximum amount of $8,750. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Donna Taggart. Anyone have any questions or comments for Donna? The adage of in for a pound, in for a penny, in for a pound comes to mind. I think you've got to complete a study. You don't get really relevant information if you don't do it all. Any other comments? Anyone prepared to make a motion? See, Councillor Cadigan, go ahead.
I'll make a motion that council receive the report from the CAO treasurer and that council approve the use of service delivery reserves to the maximum amount of $8,750.
Thank you, Councillor Cadigan. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Deputy Mayor Armstrong?
With a comment.
Any comment? Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to look it up, but our 4th goal in our strategic plan is to help the corporation remain an employer of choice for existing and new staff. So I think it aligns very well with that, and it's a small amount to pay to ensure that we in fact do that.
Thank you very much for that comment, Deputy Mayor Armstrong. Any other comments? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Thank you very much, Donna Taggart. Now we can move on to 10.7 of our agenda, which is corporate services, and 10.7.1 is Jesse Clark, our Director of Corporate Services Clerk. Would you like to speak to this item?
Thank you. Through you, Mayor Lambshead. At the June 6, 2023 council meeting, council supported the approval for the purchase of a portion of East Clear Bay Road for the sale price equal to the fee for the purchase of the shoreline road allowance in front of the property known municipally as 22 Rview Way. Draft reference plan has now been completed and is attached to the report. While completing the draft reference plan, it was determined that there are 2 islands located within the municipal shoreline road allowance created by flooding, and these are indicated as parts 3 and parts 4 and 5 on the draft plan. The straight lot line projection of the easterly limit of 22 RV Way intersects the shoreline road allowance and effectively cuts off a sliver of the western tip of the second island, and that's shown as Part 4. Through discussions with the property owner, it was determined that it was in the best interest of both parties to have ownership of the entirety of both islands, given to the owner of 22 RV Way being Neville Nutt. As this would deviate from the municipality's normal practice, staff are looking for council support to sell Part 5 of the shoreline road allowance to Neville Nutt.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Jesse, anyone have any comments or questions? See none. Is anyone prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Braybrook.
Thank you. I'll make a motion to receive and that council approve the sale as laid out by our clerk.
Thank you very much for that motion. Do I have a seconder for the motion? See Councillor Franzen for a seconder. Any other conversation? I'm seeing none. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can now move on to item 11 of our agenda, which is correspondence for information. Item 11.1, does anyone want to speak to this item or prepared to make a motion? Go ahead, Councillor Braber.
I'll make a motion to receive comment. I was going to save it for information items, but just a reminder, June 1st, Saturday, June 1st, 5 o'clock is the spring supper at Lakehurst Hall. It's $20 a person. So just a reminder.
Amen. All right. Do we have a seconder for that motion? Yeah, we need a seconder for that motion. See Deputy Mayor Armstrong for a seconder. Any other conversation? We'll call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can move on to item 12 of our agenda, which is correspondence for action. We have 4 there. We can do them one at a time or all 4 with one motion, whichever you prefer. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Thank you, Mayor Lambson. I would like to pull out 12.3.
Okay. Any other ones want to be talked about individually? Okay. We can talk about 12.3 first, if you would like to go ahead with that, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Sure, I just wanted to pull it out to support. I thought we had supported this previously, but I guess it was at the county level that we already did.
Yeah.
My memory fails me, but at any rate.
A couple of years ago, we might have supported this as well.
We pay our firefighters little enough as it is, so any benefit that they are able to get in serving us as they do, we should certainly support.
We should support that one for council as well. Okay, I thank you for that. That's a motion to support. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Gadigan for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Okay, we can have a motion for the other 3 if someone is prepared. Go ahead, Councillor Franzen.
Motion to receive the other 3.
Okay. Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on to item 13 of our agenda now, which is bylaws. Bianca, are you speaking to the memorandum? Okay, please go ahead.
Thank you, and through you. On today's agenda, there is one bylaw that doesn't have a corresponding report or not part of a public meeting, which is just the annual bylaw to appoint the County of Peterborough area weed inspectors for the Municipality of Trent Lakes for 2024.
Okay, thank you very much. Bianca Dragicevic. Oh my goodness. We can move it now. We can proceed through all these bylaws in one motion, or we can do them individually, whichever the preference of council is. 13.3, 13.4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 13.2. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor Armstrong.
Let me attempt this, Mayor Lamson. A motion to approve the 4 bylaws that are related to development charges.
Okay.
So highway, fire, parks, recreation, and library.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Do we have a seconder for that motion? See Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Now we can move on to item 13.6, which is zoning bylaw amendment. Anyone prepared to make a motion or would like to comment? Okay. Go ahead, Councillor Briggs, or Cadigan.
Through your mayor, I would make a motion to receive 13.6, 13.7, 13.8.
I think we need to approve them for that.
Oh, to approve the bylaw 13.6, 13.7, 13.8.
Okay, I have a motion for approval of the last three. Is there a seconder for that motion? I see Deputy Mayor Armstrong, seconder. Any other conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. Now we can move on to item 14 of our agenda, which is business arising out of a previous meeting. Does anyone have any business arising out of a previous meeting? I'm seeing none. I can move on to item 15 of our agenda, which is a notices of motion. Does anyone have a notice of motion to present? Seeing none. We can move on to item 16 of our agenda, which is information items. Go ahead, Councillor Franz.
Yeah, I have one. It's on the 27th of April, and it's the art auction at Galway Hall. It's to provide funding for improvements in Mount.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mark.
$35 per person.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. Thank you, Peter. Councillor Franzen. Go ahead, Councillor Brayberg.
Thank you. Through you, Mayor. Just an update as far as the Community Safety and Policing Act. As of yesterday, it's officially enacted. And with that, we being the county and the municipality are working with the other municipalities as far as logistics on forming the new detachment board, which will be consolidating the 7 municipalities to one board. Wow. So it'll be a 15 person board. There'll be 9 council appointees, which includes 2 First Nations, Hiawatha and Curve Lake. Also, there's going to be a reduction in the community representatives and the provincial appointees. So it'll be 3 each. So we'll be looking to conduct some meetings with the other municipalities in order to assemble the new detachment for Peterborough County. So there'll be more information coming out as a result of that. And just to add, the Inspectorate General, once all the boards are in place and it's running at top speed, the Inspectorate General will then decide when they're going to conduct their inspections of each of the police services boards. But they've made it clear, the Inspector General's office as well as the Solicitor General's office has made it clear that they realize that it's going to be there's going to be some growing pains as far as assembling these detachment boards. It's going to take some time, so up to a year possibly, just to get things in place and ensure. So they're not going to come out with the sticks until everything's in place. They're just operating strictly with carrots at this point. So I just wanted to bring that to council's attention.
Thank you very much for being on that board. I greatly appreciate your expertise in that area. And you're representing Trent Lakes quite well. I've heard that from several people already. There's some training and stuff involved with some of the people on there that seem to be a little problematic with some of the people that aren't in the position that you're in. So thank you very much for being on that and the information.
Thank you.
Okay, we can move on to item 17 of our agenda, which is our closed meeting. I would entertain a motion to go into closed under the Municipal Act, Section 239(2), to discuss E, litigation and potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality or local board, Dewdney statement of claim. F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose, Dewdney statement of claim. I would entertain a motion to go into closed for them reasons. Councillor Franzen for a mover. Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are going into closed. Okay. Everybody's ready. We are going to go to section 7.2 of our agenda, which is rise from closed. I would entertain a motion for same. The Deputy Mayor Armstrong and Councillor Braybrook for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion is carried. We are back in a regular council meeting. We can move on to item 18 of our agenda, which is business arising out of a closed meeting, and this is adoption of our minutes. It's 18.1 is the item on our agenda. Would anyone care to make that motion? See Councillor Braybrook for a mover, Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. Any conversation? Seeing none, I will call for the vote. All in favor? Motion has carried. We can move on to item 19 of our agenda, which is the adoption of the confirming bylaw, which is item 19.1. Care to make that motion? See Councillor Franzen for a mover, Councillor Cadigan for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We can move on to item 20 of our agenda, which is our adjournment. I would entertain a motion to adjourn. Councillor Braybrook for a mover and Councillor Franzen for a seconder. I will call for the vote. All in favor? That motion has carried. We are adjourned at 4:39. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, staff. Thank you, council.